Welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jamie Agostino, your host. On this show, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today on Financial Minds Meet the Experts, we are starting our 3-week series dedicated to onboarding. Today, we are joined by Miss Jeanne Heath, Learning and Engagement Champion for Vizo Financial. Jeanne, thank you so much for joining me today. But before we get started, would you mind telling our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. It's funny, I rarely hear Miss Jeanne Heath. So, wow, thanks so much for such a great introduction. So, I have worked in the financial services industry for about 30 years. And I started my career as a teller, and then I moved into new accounts. And then I spent a lot of time, and this is really where I'm still at today with training and employee development. Although I started more on the technical side, I've had a lot of experience with mergers and acquisitions training. I probably went through about 12 of those. And now I focus a lot on onboarding, employee engagement, and development. And I'll tell you, I think this is interesting and a piece of advice I like to share with people. Don't burn your bridges, because the person who hired me for my very first job 30 years ago is the person who hired me here 30 years later.
Yeah, good advice there. Thanks,
Hmm.
Jeanne. All right, so
Yeah.
let's dive into onboarding. I know this is a passion of yours.
Mm.
You do a webinar series for Vizo Financial. Today, let's focus on intro to onboarding. So, what is the difference between onboarding and orientation?
I like how I can even hear in your voice the difference, onboarding and orientation. And really, that is what the difference is. Um, as you know, I'm always researching and looking at what other organizations are doing around onboarding. And I loved this phrase, and I think it's true for us, that onboarding is a strategic business decision that organizations make. And it's a decision to sort of immerse new people in the culture of your organization right away, and also the operations of what they need to do. And for us, this is really like such an important decision that we do the cultural piece of onboarding on their very first day, meaning that we will adjust when a person can start if for some reason we couldn't do their cultural onboarding on their first day. We really feel that's so important. And then not only that, they don't even see paperwork till late in the day, their first day or the second day. That's not part of what we do. Now, of course, and we'll talk about it, our program goes on a lot further than that. But onboarding is that immersion and really like helping them dive right in, where orientation, um, to me, it's sort of like just filling out the paperwork, or what comes to mind is you're sort of just getting processed. Oh, okay, you accepted. Here's all the things you need to do your work. Now go do it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
What are the necessary components of a good onboarding program?
Well, I think the basis of where you should start is really thinking about the question that your employees have. Why should I join the credit union? That's really what your onboarding is doing, is solidifying that they made a good decision, and why should they join and why should they stay. And then after that, it needs to be engaging and very purposeful. I mean, that's one of the pieces that is really important about having an onboarding program, is that it is consistent and the same and prepared. People know when one onboarding experience is different from another, and they'll come back to you like, hey, I didn't get what that person got. So that consistency, that purposefulness, that engagement. Um, and really, what you want to do is tell them they made the right decision by joining your organization. And you don't want to just tell them in words, you want to show them through your actions. Um, think of ways that the new employee can begin to interact with coworkers right away. Not only people on their teams, but people within the larger organization. Um, maybe it's setting up a lunch the very first day, or a couple team members meet them in the lobby. Um, but also then helping them get set up in their work and what they're doing. They want to make sure that all their logons are working and all of that stuff. And then really just giving them a path to where the next few days and the next few weeks will be going. So they don't feel that, like, oh, you've been hired and now we're sort of setting you adrift out on a lifeboat by yourself and hopefully you can figure it out. So that I think that engaging and purposefulness are really important there and necessary components.
All right. Great. Thank you. Yeah, having an agenda, knowing what's going to be expected of you over the next couple of days is great. Because I mean, they're nervous. I mean, who's not when you start a new job? You're like, oh, did I make the right decision? So
Mhm.
being very structured that way sounds great.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point that I'm very sensitive to this as adults. We don't want to look stupid. We don't want to look embarrassed. We want to look like, hey, I've got it all together from the first day. Well, how can you do that in a new environment? So it's our job to set it up so they can have it all together. So the things that are known and common to us become known and common to them. If you're on site, one of the things that we've always done is I give them what's called, or I set up for them an insider tour of the building, and not just, here's where the lunchroom is or here's where the restroom, but you tell them things like, you know what, this snack machine gets filled on Tuesdays. That's when you want to come down, or this is the best place to eat. All those things that they want to know, that you've come to know, that help them feel like part of the team pretty quickly.
Right. So how do you get all the departments on board to participate in an onboarding process or program?
You know, that's a good question. And I'll tell you that honestly, you know, I think all departments, they want to see employees succeed. It's really like the same things for others. It's a time issue, and it's they don't know where to start or what you want from them.
Mhm.
So I think it's and it can be overwhelming then, because when you're onboarding a new person, whether it is in your department or if you're another department, this is on top of the job that you're already doing, and it takes a lot of time. So, I think you help get them on board by including them, and sort of laying out the path of what you'd like them to do. Don't leave it up to them. um and even, you might think it's like, oh, just talk to them, tell them what you do. And but even that can be different from each department to department. So I think it's a lot of like, here's the 5 things that I'd like you to go over if it's not the person's true department. um it's also thinking about who are people in the organization that just from your knowledge might click with this new employee. And so you set time up with them to talk to them. And the same thing in the department. It's really laying out a plan, and really being there to support the plan then as well. You've got to guide the departments through the process. And again, not because they don't want to, but because sometimes they're not sure what you want from them.
Mhm.
And going back to, adults don't want to be embarrassed, they want to make a good impression. So the more you can help them with that, the more important it is. Um, the other thing is, with new employees, I think it's really critical that nothing falls through the cracks. Um, so, a department can have the best intentions, and all of a sudden something blows up there. If you're not having somebody who's helping and directing that process through no fault of their own, we've now had a big misstep with the new employee. So I think the way you get them on board is, one, be sure to include them. I mean, they want to know, like, hey, who's this new person I'm starting to see and what are they doing? But also then tell them how you want to include them and guide them, I think, through that process. Um, and then the more that you do that, it gets easier and easier each time. Okay, last time you wanted me to do this, is this is what you want this time? Yep, exactly correct. So, a little bit of that effort at the front end really pays off in the end.
Yeah. All right. Well, what all goes into the back end of developing an onboarding program for an organization?
Well, um, I think it starts with a lot of research. You know, I think there's lots of organizations that don't even have a formalized program. They just sort of like throw it together each time. Um, so what I've liked to do is I start off with sort of that a version of that start, stop, continue model. I think about what are we already doing, or what's the organization already doing? Um, what is the existing experience for people, and what's the results of that? So I do that from my own experience of seeing the organization. Um, then I also like to go and talk to past new hires. And when I say that, in my mind, I typically go back maybe the past year. Just because some people, if you've been here a long time, you don't necessarily remember what your experience was. But I find if you go back to people, the past 6 months or a year, and you ask them those same things, like what really worked for you, but also what were the things that would have been helpful to have had and would have made you probably productive a little bit faster if those had been set up. So I take that information as well. And then I even say, like, so out of all those things, if you could have had anything, what's a little extra that would have just added that pop or wow to it? Because sometimes it's something easy that you can do and it makes a big impression on people. Um, then I also go to the hiring managers because the first part, that research is more about creating the experience for the new person. But
Mhm.
then the hiring managers also, once the person's in their department, it's like, what do you need to be able to support this new hire? What is it I can do to help you in that process? Because again, you know, sometimes when you hire somebody new, you've been looking for that person for a while, and the rest of your team is already stressed because they've had to be working extra, so there can be a tendency to just like, all right, here's your job, here's your desk, get going, talk to Jamie, she'll tell you everything she needs to know that you need to know. But if you lay out a plan for them and you find out, well, what would help you, what would support you through that process, you can make it again very uniform and very specific for each person. um, but I think it's helpful. And I've had managers that came back that have said, like, oh, I'm so happy for that. It also makes it much less overwhelming for
Mhm.
people. So I think that's the next piece. I ask them, what do they need to really create that exceptional experience? Then I also go to our HR partners and our organization. Um, I do the cultural piece. So it's a little bit different than our HR partners. Um, but I talk to them and I'm like, what is it that you've done so far already? What is it you think that you need even before I start to help that process? Um, and then what is your experience? Like, what kinds of things can we add to make to cement what you did, but also make it more meaningful as well? Um, and then after I have all that information, which is a lot, then that's when I begin the design process, the design and the development, creating your presentations, designing your checklists, gathering the supplies that you're going to need, creating those experiences. And I sort of think about it as the process of sort of like a relay race. In the relay race, each person has a part and you hand off the baton. And that's really what we're trying to do here is, your HR people really probably have had the first and the most contact with the new employees. So they've started the race. So I want to be able to pick up the baton, do my part, and then hand it off to the hiring manager, who's really the final runner in the relay race that will sort of bring us home and get us the win.
Okay. Well, I've heard you say that onboarding starts even before the employee's first day. Can you explain that more? How do you incorporate onboarding activities before they even begin?
Yeah, it is. And, right now when we're producing this, we're hearing a lot about the great resignation. And if people aren't happy, they're going to leave right away. So you're putting yourself in a pretty dangerous and precarious place if what you're doing is making an offer, saying, "Here's your start date. See you then." You've got a like what's generally a 2-week period then where lots of other organizations could swoop in and still take this person. Um, so I think once the offer has been accepted, it's really important to continue to engage them with the company right away. I like to do things if the HR manager has been the one who's made the offer. I like to follow that up with a little bit right after, the hiring manager, then calling the person on the phone. Hey, I heard you got your offer. We're so excited that you're joining. Those personal touches that are each one is making them, we use the term in sales, a little stickier, a little bit more sticky to the organization. So now they've gotten the offer, they're excited, they've heard from the manager, and if the manager is the one that's made the call, think about how impressive it would be to a new hire who hasn't even started yet if they get a call from like that manager's manager. Hey, I heard Jamie just made you the offer. That's so great. She was thrilled that you accepted it. We're excited for you to join. Not only have you now really wowed that person, but it's you make those ripple effects because they're going to hang up the phone and they're going to be like, wow, like our regional executive, my boss's boss just called me. And each of those makes an impression. Um, I think also, it's we do a welcome packet then, and we tell them this like, hey, you're going to expect something that gives them opportunities to learn and get prepared about the organization before they even started. And these are things like, here's our vision and here's our values. Here is a little bit like in the credit union, we start to tell them about the credit union movement. All of those pieces they start to learn about. What's the difference between a credit union and a bank? Um, those are the things, but also a little bit of fun in there. We tell them, hey, we're excited for you. We prepare a swag bag for them. Sometimes, depending on if they're going to be on site or virtual, we either mail it to their home or they get it as soon as they come. So it's those little touches. You've got a 2-week period that if you pick 2 or 3 things to keep checking in with them, maybe you give them another call like, hey, it's the last weekend before you start. You better go out and have fun because we've got a plan for you here. Um, and then it's also like when they get there, you want them to feel like you've been expecting them. So you're not running in at the last minute. You're not like, oh, I'll run down and meet you. Someone's there waiting for them. And I think that's really, it starts before that first day so that once that first day starts, you're just continuing that experience. It's not the beginning of it.
Right. It sounds like everything is truly intentional and that you truly care about them as a person and you want, them to feel like I hate to use the word special, but I mean it's kind of, they're special and they've accepted a job and they're going to be a new employee and it's being intentional through every step of the phase based on what you're saying.
Yeah. And if you as a hiring manager, you're like, well, I'm not super creative, or whoever is doing this, can put together the program, but they're like, I don't know what the creative things would be. Reach out to people in your organization. I mean, Jamie, you love to be creative. You do lots of unique things when your new team members join the organization. So there's people that are out there that have tons of ideas of things that you can do. And again, go back to that info you got from your employees about what made a difference. We've had a lot of employees. One of the other things we do once we were on site, is they always had lunch with the CEO or senior leader their first day or two.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you the number of people that have said like, wow, like at my last job, I hadn't even talked to the CEO before I left, and now I've had lunch with them already.
Yeah. Wow.
hmm
How does a good onboarding program set a new employee up for success?
Well, I think at first it's important to keep in mind that a good onboarding program sets your organization up for success first. You know, um, A great onboarding program increases retention, and the statistics are really amazing. Some statistics say upwards of 82%. And depending where you look, you'll find different costs. But the most recently, what I saw is that the cost to onboard an employee can be somewhere around $4,000 to $6,000 per employee. So for you to do that, to make that investment and then lose the employee, like that's hard dollars you're losing there. So if you can increase your chances of setting them up for success by 82%, I mean, that's pretty impressive. Um, and not only that, when you have a really successful onboarding program, it helps the employee become productive faster. And that in itself, I mean, there is like, they'll say a good program, you can become productive 60% faster. I mean, again, why would you not do something like that? Those are incredible statistics. Why would you not do that? Um, and again, go back to what I said, by the time you've gone through the process of hiring somebody new, your existing staff, they're stressed and they're worn out. They've had to bring on this extra work. And if you've not done this, you maybe have gone through one or two or three people that didn't really work out. You know, so the more that you have a successful, purposeful, in place process, it's going to set the company up for success as well. Um, but for the employee, again, it helps to make them productive faster, but it also follows a little bit of a path to help them be more productive and give them guidance along the way. So, again, they feel like they're contributing faster. I mean, everybody knows when you start, or you may have had an experience if you had a new employee, they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't know this. Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't do this. Oh, I'm so sorry I have to ask you for this." And they feel bad about it. But you're like, "You're new. You shouldn't feel bad about this." But the more that you can put things in place to help them feel productive faster or independent faster, that's really the key. And when I think about it, I know that I have set an employee up for success and that they are succeeding. If, say, maybe I'm on a meeting with them a couple months later, and I might ask the question like, "When did you start?" And they may say, "Oh, it was just about 3 or 4 months." And they're like, "It feels like I've been here forever." I mean, that's a phrase you're looking for. If somebody can already say, "Man, I feel like I've been here forever," or somebody says to the new employee, "Man, I thought you'd been here forever," you know that they've been integrated into the team, that they're well on their way to success, and that you've given them the tools that they need to be able to be a productive and successful employee.
Okay. I've also heard you kind of use the phrase the Disney treatment, giving employees the Disney treatment. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think what it is, a lot of people think that the Disney treatment is just creating magical experiences. And believe me, that's definitely part of it. But everything that Disney does from the moment they interact with you is skipping over to when are you coming back? It's not even your first experience there. Um, so and if you think about it, when you start thinking about your first trip to Disney, even before you book it, as you're thinking about, "Oh, can we do this?" and stuff like that, you start dreaming about all the things you want to do there. Or it's almost like when you buy a new car and all of a sudden you see that car everywhere. Once you start to think about going to Disney, everyone seems to like have an experience. Or now, how about with our phones? They hear you say that you want to go to Disney, and now every ad. So it's building up that momentum and that excitement. And once you set that trip and you set it up, they begin to engage with you as the organization. "We're so excited. We can't wait to see you. We have this set up." And even things, like Mickey and Minnie are waiting for you. And what's amazing to me is how even grown adults like get so excited. "Mickey's waiting for me." That's the same thing that you want, and then they send emails to you, and then they start sending you packages, the wristbands that you can be wearing. And how about that wristband? Talk about making the experience as easy as possible. Everything there. Doop, doop. Yep, I want it. And that's what you want to be doing with your onboarding and program. Is yep, it's all ready to go. Yep, we got that for you. Um, that's what makes that magical experience. And the thing is, even if you make a misstep, sometimes in Disney, it's fun to have a mistake because the way they recover is pretty incredible as well. So I'm not saying that you want to make a misstep, but once you have set up a program like this and you want to give people the Disney treatment, if a mistake happens, it's automatically natural to you to say, "Ooh, what do I need to do to fix this?" And not only that, and you think about something fun that you want to do. But not only that, because you've been so purposeful, because you've made that mistake or that slip up, it's not as noticeable to the new employee because everything else has been such an incredible experience. And as they move through that with Disney, I mean, your first day, it's not even your first day. You're at lunch and you're like, when are we coming back? You know, you're already planning that. That's the same kind of experience that you want for your employee. How can we make it magical and make you want to come back?
Great. Thank you, Jean. Really appreciate it. And just as a side note, those bands are dangerous though too. Because they make it so easy. Oh, you
Yeah.
want that t-shirt? Great. Boom.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I appreciate the time just to talk about onboarding, and I'm looking forward to having you back for the next 2 weeks to dive into this topic a little bit more. But any final thoughts for our listeners today?
I think what it is this information, it can be overwhelming. I think, especially if you are a small credit union, who you have your senior people are also tellers sometimes. Start with the smallest piece. Do that research first. Like what are we doing already? And then build from it. And then just start with a checklist. Don't think that you have to do this all in one day. How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. Because think about it, what you're doing is you're improving a process. You're not trying to fix a mistake. You're just working to make it better and better. So even if you start with something small, it's way better than what you were doing already.
All right. Well, Jean, again, thank you. Next week, Jean will be back, and the two of us are going to talk about building and maintaining an onboarding program. Before we end the podcast episode today, I also want to thank Sally May for sponsoring the episode on Financial Minds Meet the Experts. Vizo Financial is partnered with Sally May to offer credit unions a comprehensive suite of products and services to support your members' educational financial needs. Now is the time to start preparing for the rush of students, many of them your members, searching for these education loans. Learn more about the Sally Mae program by attending the Offer Education Loans to Your Members with Sally Mae webinar on May 11th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. To register, go to www.vfccu.org. Thanks for listening, and I hope you all have a great day.